Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cynthia if you are new here, and today I actually wanted to talk about fantasy romance books I probably will never read, which is interesting because I've been deeply into fantasy romance for almost 2 years now, which is not a long time, and I've read a good chunk of books, at least like 4 or 5 dozen fantasy romance books, which again isn't a big chunk, but I work full time, I'm doing my best. And in that time, I have also discovered books and series that I don't know if I will read or continue. I will disclaim I'm going to primarily be talking about series versus books, primarily because some of the series I actually have started. I've read either the first or second book in this series, and I'm just not convinced that I want to continue the series, which is where you come in. If you can change my mind, I will read these series before the year is out. And that is a promise. That's a dangerous promise, but I'm gonna make it because I mean it. If I can be convinced, then these books deserve to be read. So just a few housekeeping tidbits. Popular is subjective. These are just my opinions. What I think is popular, you might not, and that's okay. Books that I really like or dislike, you may like or dislike, and that's okay. I firmly believe that on this channel we can agree to disagree, as long as it's not personal. And this isn't personal. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into the first series. The first series up on the list, and honestly, if you follow my reviews, this shouldn't come as a surprise, but the Mortal Fate series by J. Bree. I did read the first book, The Crown of Oaths and Curses, and by the time I finished it, I wanted to yeet my Kindle out of my living room window, and I live on the 3rd floor, so my Kindle probably was not going to survive that fall. This book, on the surface, had all of the popular fantasy romance elements that I really like, and some that really stuck out to me were enemies to lovers, witches, fated maids. I eat that stuff up, okay? So when I read the summary for this book, I was in. I was sold. I didn't even need to read any reviews online. I was like, give it to me, okay? I was like Sabrina Carpenter, just give it to me. But the problem I have with this book, okay, is that the enemies just stay enemies. There is no romance. There are no lovers. They are just enemies. And do you want to know why? Do you want to know why for anyone who hasn't read this book? It's because the female main character is so strong and amazing and powerful that it makes the main male character feel insecure in his own masculinity, and he can't take it, okay? He chooses to despise her rather than just love her because she is amazing. I finally find my favorite female main character in a fantasy romance book, and she gets paired with the most insufferable male main character, which I can't forgive. One last point before I move on. I did Google the second book because I needed to know, okay, before I invested more time and energy, I needed to know, does Soren, our main male character, grovel to Rooksbane, or Rook, our female main character? And do you know what I learned? There is no groveling. And so there is no rest of this series for me. So if you liked the Mortal Fate series by J. Bree and you think that I should stick out the next book and continue on with the series because it does get better, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'm never picking up another J. Bree book again. The second book on the list is... the second series on the list is Kindred's Curse by Penn Cole. I did read Spark of the Everflame, which is the first book in the series, and this book has the opposite problem that The Crown of Oaths and Curses had for me, and that is that I hated the main character, Diem, but I was completely fascinated by the love interest, Luther. Like, it was swapped. I also think another issue was that the tropes in Spark of the Everflame just felt so overdone and overused that by the time I read it, I was just kind of like, great. Another lost heir, chosen one, she's special, and everyone else is a peasant kind of situation. And I was tired of it, okay? So, I will continue this series on one condition. If Diem grows a brain, if Homegirl gets a little bit less insufferable, I will consider continuing this series. This is going to be a hard one because enraptured as I was with Luther, Diem was so off-putting. Oh, the next series is no surprise, and that is the Powerless series by Lauren Roberts, because let me tell you, y'all lied to me about Powerless, okay? And for some godforsaken reason, I thought it would get better, and I read Reckless. Joke's on me, it got worse. I didn't think that was possible. But it did. The series got worse. And I do not forgive anyone on the internet who recommends Powerless. Because, let's be honest, okay, the writing is bad. The writing is not good. It's very bad. It's very hard to get into. The use of tropes, I feel like I'm reading early Sarah J. Maas, except they're done badly. And the main character, Pei, yeah, that's right, Peyton, aka Pei, she's up there with Diem, okay? And this love triangle that's happening, that, by the way, isn't even a love triangle, at least in Reckless. Just no, I'm not here for it, okay? I don't like it. They're brothers. That's gross. And I will give it credit where credit's due, because the tension, like, it was, I can't say that. The tension was fantastic, okay? The tension was really good, and it had me. It really had me. But the way the author then handled breaking the tension in the second book felt like she just did it for us, the readers. And I didn't really like that either. But the third and final book is publishing soon. Probably less than a month at this point. I'm filming this and we'll publish it by the end of March. So within a few weeks, the third book will publish. And quite honestly, I don't want to pick it up. I'm curious to know how it ends, but I don't know if I'm curious enough to actually finish it. And considering that I have 2 reading vlogs in this series already, one for Powerless, one for Reckless, I'm tempted to read the third book, Fearless, just to round out the reading vlogs, but I don't know. I don't know if I can. I don't know if y'all can make me sit through a third one. Also, just want to say, I do not say y'all this much. I think this video is just taking it out of me, and I had a very stressful day at work. And so I think there's some subconscious part in the back of my brain, like, making its way to the surface. So I apologize if I say y'all more throughout this video. But the 4th series on the list is Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. And I know. I read ACOTAR. I loved ACOTAR. I'm currently reading Throne of Glass. Very much enjoying Throne of Glass, even though I'm still very early into it. But I won't read Crescent City. Here's why. Okay, I have reasons. First of all, I'm not really a fan of urban fantasy. I like my fantasy romance epic. I like action, I like adventure, I like swords. Okay? I'm not really a fan of, like, urban fantasy, cozy fantasy, sci-fi fantasy. I don't want any of that. Okay? I like epic fantasy. So there's one. 2, these books are very, very long. Okay, I read the summary for House of Blood and Earth, which is the first book in the Crescent City series, and it took me 30 minutes just to get through the summary. Okay? That's a big time investment. And third, I just didn't like what I read in the summary. Oh, there's also a 4th point. I have read views and opinions. I've read reviews and opinions online, and the consensus is that this series is going majorly downhill. And considering the fact that we're still waiting on the 6th ACOTAR book with no announcement in sight, I just don't know if I want to invest any more time or money into Sarah J. Maas. But if it's that good, if it's up there or better than ACOTAR or Throne of Glass, I don't know. I could be convinced. But you'd really have to do a lot of convincing. Sorry. The next series on the list is the Moonfall series by Sarah A. Parker. I wasn't sure if I was going to include this series on the list because the second book isn't out yet, but I did start When the Moon Hatched because it came at the perfect time. Like, all of us were drowning in our sorrows from Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and we just needed more dragons and less heartbreak. And I DNF'd When the Moon Hatched. It wasn't for me. The writing was so, the best way that I can describe it, the writing was like wading through cement that was almost dry. Like, it was so hard to get through. And I hate writing like that. Like, just write. And not only that, I really disliked the main character. Like, early on in the book, there's a scene where the main character comes home to her best friend who's clearly in pain and suffering over something, and she's just so cold about it, and I was just like, nah. This is not for me. And at first, I will say, I was impressed by, like, the 30-page glossary in the front of the book. Yeah, that got old real fast when I found myself confused every other page. So, I don't know. I guess consider this one an honorable mention. I think of all the series on the list, this one might be the easiest one to persuade me to read. And that is the Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And I'm going to be honest, even if you make fun of me for it, the main reason I have not read these books is because I saw the virgin trope and I said, no. I do not like the virgin trope. I have yet to, minor spoiler, but the Everkeen does have the virgin trope, and I think LJ Andrews handled it pretty well, but I'm not willing to chance it with other authors, especially authors like Jennifer L. Armentrout, who are very popular in the fantasy romance kind of space, especially on like Book Talk and things like that. And I'm just not sure if this series is going to be right for me, because I really do not like the virgin trope. It's up there with like the pregnancy trope. Like, I just, no. I've unfortunately read more books that did them badly than did them well, and so for that reason, it's a no from me. Like I said, this is probably the only series, aside from the Powerless series by Lauren Roberts, that I probably could be convinced to read, just because I do think that I actually might enjoy it. But like I said, I'm hesitant. I saw the virgin trope and I backed away. I put it down and I left the building. And the last series on the list is the Zodiac Academy series by Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti. And listen, okay, I love the Zodiacs. I love anything Zodiac, anything astrology. I find it so fun to read them and kind of learn about other people through their like astrology and Zodiac signs. If you're curious, I am a Sun, Moon, Taurus. But what I don't like is the bully trope. The bully trope is up there with the virgin trope and the pregnancy trope, okay? They're all just like in a club hanging out with each other. I'm not a fan. And this was a big reason why I really didn't like The Cruel Prince. That series did get better, to be fair. To be fair to Holly Black. By the end of the third book, I was satisfied. I'm not really a fan of the whole bully trope thing, and on top of that, I have seen reviews, and I'm kind of surprised there aren't more of them about at least the early books having a lot of like non-consensual stuff written in them, and like that's... Consent is sexy, okay? Consent is cool. In this house, we stand consent. We like consent. And so I just don't want to read a book that's, first of all, written by two women where there's like bully romances and non-consensual acts being performed. That just doesn't sound like the book or series for me. And like I said, that could just be the early books, because this series is long. I believe there's 12 books in the whole series. I could be wrong. If you read this series, please let me know, because I'm not entirely sure. So for all I know, this series could get a lot better and the authors could improve as they go, but currently I'm not sold. And I will need to be convinced to read this series. Also, it's very intimidating. There's a lot of books. A lot of the other series on this list are only 2 to 3 books, or if they are going to be more like 4 or 5 books, the other books aren't even out yet. Like, we have plenty of time before they're published. And so I think the Zodiac Academy being a completed, very long series is also a little bit intimidating. All right, and that's all I've got. That is all the series. I did choose to focus on series for this list instead of books, just because I do tend to read more series than standalone. If you're curious about standalone fantasy romance books that I probably won't read unless someone changes my mind about them, I could definitely make that video too. I definitely have a list somewhere of standalone fantasy romances that I wanted to read but ended up changing my mind about reading them, or I started them and then DNF'd them. So if you're interested in that, please leave me a comment below and I will come up with a list and film another video. But like I said, some of these series, like, I did start and it just didn't resonate with me, or I saw something online and I was just like, no, not even gonna get invested. But some of the series on this list, my mind probably could be changed. To be quite honest with you, I am easily influenced. I don't like that about myself, but it is true. I am easily influenced. So, and like I also mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you can change my mind about any of these series, like if you think it's really, really worth it I read them, I definitely will read them by the end of the year, because I'm always looking for another great book. And honestly, even if I don't like it, like if I'm convinced, I'm influenced, and I decide to read it and I don't like it, I mean, I'm just going to come back and roast it. I'm just going to come back and roast your favorite books. So, at the end of the day, not the end of the world, but if you liked any of the series on this list and didn't like that I didn't like them, I apologize. These are just my opinions. And if you liked this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. I never drop that because it feels very inauthentic of me, but I feel like I should say it. So we said it. But I think that's all I've got. I think I'm all talked out. Like I said, today was a rough day. Corporate was corporating too hard for a Monday, but I digress. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I am very much looking forward to being influenced to read book series that I probably wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. And other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one. Bye!